All right, good morning, guys. Today is lesson 5.04, probability distributions. The aim is how do we identify all possible outcomes and odds of a situation. So today is the first time we're going to try this. Please let me know what you think. You're going to start this video once you complete the do now, because we're going to review it together right now. So, do now. The probability that the first snow of the winter season will fall on a Thursday is 1/7. Explain why the probability is 1/7. So let's think about this, right? We don't know specifics. We don't know where we are. We don't necessarily know that one day is more favorable to snow than the other. So what are we looking at? Well, we're looking at 7 days a week. Thursday's one of them. So when we talk about probabilities, right, we always do the acceptable outcomes over the total outcomes. So in this case, total outcomes are the 7 days of the week. Acceptable outcomes in this case would be the Thursday, so your probability would be 1/7. So now let's look into some probability concepts, right? So when we say a random variable, what we're saying is a variable whose values depend on an outcome of a random event. That could be anything. Rolling a dice, flipping a coin, spinning a spinner, anything where some outcome could change what the variable is or change the value of that variable. Now, when we say a discrete random variable, because we are going to talk about something called continuous, a discrete variable is a variable that only contains a finite amount of outcomes. So what that means is think of a measurement, think of like weight, think of like height. You could measure it down to inches, centimeters, millimeters, very, very fractal units. Well, with these three examples, flipping a coin, rolling a dice, there's only a set amount of outcomes, right? You flip a coin, you only have heads or tails. You roll a dice, depending on what type of dice it is, but a standard dice, you're only going to roll either a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, or a 6. You can't roll a 4.5 on a dice. You can't roll 2 1/4 on a dice. That's what we mean by a discrete random variable. And then a probability distribution is simply a table or equation that links each outcome of a statistical experiment or a statistical event with its probability of occurrence. So let's look at this as a table, right? So when we break this table down, there's some things that you want to consider. You're always going to see this, x and p of x. Well, x is whatever your random variable is. So in this case, it's the possible outcomes of rolling a dice. So the possible outcomes are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. P of x is what we say, or what we refer to as the probability of each outcome. So whenever you see P of x, that means probability of x. So the probability of those 6 outcomes, as you would expect, 1/6, 1/6, 1/6, 1/6, 1/6, and 1/6. The whole table is your probability distribution. This whole thing is what we refer to as your probability distribution. This is a table form. Let's look at the algebraic form. So again, x is still the different outcomes, p of x is still the different probabilities. But now, rather than the table, the equation is simply the probabilities all added together. So the probability of 1, 1/6. The probability of 2, 1/6. The probability of 3, 1/6. The probability of 4, 1/6. Probability of 5, 1/6. Probability of 6, 1/6. Now, this whole equation down here is also your probability distribution. Now, let's talk about some rules, right? So in order for it to be a distribution, certain criteria must be met. Number one, the probabilities must add to 1 or 100%. So in this case of the dice, 1/6, 1/6, 1/6, 1/6, 1/6, 1/6 adds up to 1, right? If you're talking about probabilities or percentages or decimals, then those should add up to 1 if it's a decimal or 100% if it's probabilities. Second, probabilities cannot be a negative value. So you can't have the odds of something being less than 0 because if the odds of something occurring are 0, that simply means it'll never occur. So for instance, What is the probability that I will take a vacation the first week of September? It is 0 because as a teacher, I have to be in school. So I will never be able to take a vacation that week. I wouldn't say that I have a negative 10% chance because what does it mean? What does it mean to be a negative percent? So now, before you move on, you're going to try the guided problems on your own and then you'll come back and we will review it together. So, guided practice, right? Determine if the following table is a valid probability distribution. Well, let's look. So we have X, right? Which is the possible colors we can get if we pulled colored marbles out of a bag. We have probabilities. So the probability of blue is 60 out of 100. Probability of green is 30 out of 100. Probability of yellow is 10 out of 100. Probability of red, 2 out of 100. So this is not a valid distribution. Why? The probabilities do not add up to 100 out of 100. If you add these all together, you get 60 plus 30 is 90. 90 plus 30 is 100. 100 plus 2 is 102. So the actual distribution would be 102 out of 100, which we cannot have 102% of something. Let's look at the second one. So you're going to complete the probability distribution for this scenario. So you have 3 green pens, 5 blue pens, and 12 black pens in a bag. You are asked to pick one at a time and record the color. So in this case, the random variable is the color of the pen, the outcomes of picking a pen. So we have green, we have blue, we have black. P of x is still the probability of each outcome. So let's break it down. There are 3 green pens and there are 20 pens total, so your probability is 3 out of 20. There are 5 blue pens, 20 total, 5 out of 20, and that leaves us with 12 black pens for a probability of 12 out of 20. All right, so now what you guys will do is you will complete those independent problems and submit that Google form. If you have any questions, please reach out. Thank you guys for trying this out, and please let me know what you think of this.